So without further ado, I am delighted to introduce our next speaker. He's going to be speaking about using digital escape rooms to navigate uncertainty and learning. I had the pleasure of working with Dr. Ginny Moffett at the Royal College of Surgeons in Ireland. We grabbed many a cup of tea to talk about our work and nerd out. And so really delighted to have you here with us, Ginny, and thanks for zooming in on your evening. But Ginny Moffett is a senior lecturer based at the Health Professions Education Center in RCSI, University of Medicine and Health Sciences in Dublin, Ireland. Ginny's program director for the RCSI Postgraduate Diploma in Health Professions Education, and she works with her team to provide faculty development to the university community. Ginny's research interests lie in digital learning and managing uncertainty. And you may know her, you may say, I know that face, because she was recently recognized as the Times Higher Education Most Innovative Teacher of the Year in 2024. So Ginny, we are delighted to have you here and excited to learn from you.
It's an absolute pleasure to be here, Amy, and thanks so much for the invite. And I feel it's very well timed with St. Patrick's Day. Like I hadn't even thought about that. So we could have gone all out in the green here. I'm just going to share my slides. Um, Brilliant. So as Amy says, I'm going to talk today. It's a little bit of an amalgamation. So it is managing uncertainty and kind of a little bit about the conceptual framework around what uncertainty is and how to manage it. And then we'll talk a little bit about a digital educational escape room that we built at RCSI as part of our efforts to help support learning around uncertainty. And then we'll move into some take homes from that. And I've certainly learned an awful lot, not just about managing uncertainty, but really with respect to my own practice as an educator, as an educational researcher. So, and what I was just saying to Amy before you joined, if anybody has any questions or wants to comment or ask anything as we go, feel free to pop that into the chat box. I am happy to take calls or take comments as we go. Okay, so for the eagle-eyed among you, you might have noticed my qualifications there. I'm actually a veterinary surgeon. I'm an interloper. I have crossed into medical education from the world of veterinary. And today in Ireland, it is, as you would expect, raining quite a bit. And not a day goes by that I'm not delighted to be inside on a day like this. But when I think about uncertainty and I think about my journey with uncertainty, it really started out. So whenever I had my first job, I was working in a rural practice in the UK, in England, and it was a mixed practice. So we had horses, cows, cats, dogs, pretty much everything. And one of the partners within the practice, he fancied himself a little bit as a zoo vet. He would dabble in exotic species, which, you know, as a veterinarian, it's kind of horrific because you would open up your waiting room and you would see somebody sitting out there with a box like this on their lap. And if you were lucky, it would be a hamster or a gerbil or, you know, I love a guinea pig. But it could quite equally, knowing our boss, it could be a scorpion, could be a tarantula. But you know, we didn't really know. There was a python waiting for me on one day, but you know, the less said about that, the better. And this would be what the appointment book would say. So urgent, drop in, please see next. Mr. Chuckles is not doing well. Now that in itself is quite an ambiguous statement. I don't know what's in there. I don't know what state it's in. And as a new graduate, I have no idea if I'm going to be able to fix any of it. So now, 20 years on, I can look back and with my knowledge of uncertainty, I can unpack all of those uncertainties. There is the probability element. I don't know what's in there. It could be A, B, C, it could be anything really. The ambiguity, there's not enough information to really understand what's happening in there. And then the complexity, if it is an exotic species and I'm not able to see it, is there another vet that can do that? What am I going to say to the client? You know, all of the kind of the multiple layers that go with that. And I think when we talk about managing uncertainty and teaching our students, supporting learning around that, this is the sort of decision making, trying to unpack those uncertainties to help them even see that it's uncertainty. Because for many of us, when we see something that we're uncertain about, we first experience that as anxiety and we get a little bit nervous about it without actually understanding that it's uncertainty at play rather than anything that's kind of particularly frightening. Now, when I went into education, I was still seeing conversations around uncertainty. I'm just going to read you. This comes from a paper by Delise Weir, who is, I think she's University of Illinois, and she talks about the constant glow emitted from PowerPoint slides and the paperless electronic curriculum washes over the learning environment, condensing and codifying knowledge and skills, hiding nuances and complexities, simplifying relationships, and flattening reflection. And what she's trying to say here is that when we look at contemporary medical education, it's very structured. We have our competency frameworks, we have constructive alignment, we have SMART goals, more guides and checklists than you could shake a stick at. But is there a concern that we could be sanitizing medical education and failing to prepare our students for the realities of an area that's often, it's not black or white. There's a lot of complexity, a lot of grey areas. And I think this is something this conversation's really been super boosted with generative AI. And I know in our team, we are fervently discussing AI, the appropriate uses, the inappropriate uses. And there's this idea about educational friction. And to have good learning, deep learning, really cognitively engaging with material, it does necessitate friction. There has to be a little bit of discomfort with that. And AI is removing that friction. And if our students are choosing to use AI in ways that strip back that cognitive engagement, it's going to lead to cognitive de-skilling. So there's this whole balance about, are we over sanitizing? So this was kind of what was going through my head. I was getting quite interested in it. But I noticed around the same time that we were starting to see discourse around this in the medical education literature and also in the broader literature. And about this time, I started with a scoping review into how teaching and learning around uncertainty was happening in medical school curricula. And about the same time as well was when the COVID pandemic started. So I've never been so on trend in my life. I actually was fashionable. I was actually, I'm actually in the right place here and talking about this. So uncertainty as a topic has really blown up. It's really mushroom from there. Now, before we go into this in more kind of detail, what I do want to do is ask the question of you. What does the word uncertainty mean to you? So I have got a poll here, and my uncertainty about whether the technology will work or not is coming up here. So this is Mentimeter. So if you can either use that code there, use the QR code, or go to menti.com and put in 8978 6380 and tell me what comes to mind when we talk about uncertainty. And is it working? Is it coming through for you? Yep. Oh, lovely. I don't know. That's very meta, that is. I like that. I don't know what uncertainty is. Oh, some brilliant ones in here. Okay, so discomfort, scary, nerves, anxiety. Absolutely. Yeah. Paralyzing. Oh, it's really, really evocative. Yeah. Challenge, gray area, insecurity, everyday reality. Yeah. Brilliant. Debates. Yeah. And I'm aware that as we talk and all of these ideas are coming in, and I hope you can see the granularity that's there, what's remaining at the center is that anxiety. And that is absolutely appropriate because we are biologically hardwired to feel anxiety in relation to uncertainty. And we know that from studies, like even looking at babies and toddlers, when they see something that's different and unexpected, they can respond aversively to that because in our early developmental stages, can't say it, developmental, yes, stages, anything that's new and different can actually be could be a threat. So what I will say, and we can look at this, and one of the things when we talk about helping support learning around uncertainty is to be able to step back and make it less anxiety provoking for us. So brilliant. Thanks so much for sharing that. I'll come out of that one and back into here. So if we take a definition around what uncertainty is, this is Dale Bratters, who is University of Iowa and would be recognized as kind of one of the foundational authors around uncertainty in healthcare. And he says that uncertainty exists when details of situations are ambiguous, complex, unpredictable, or probabilistic. That means it can go one way or the other. When information is unavailable or inconsistent, and when people feel insecure in their own state of knowledge or the state of knowledge in general. And so the first one there, when you're insecure in your own state of knowledge, that's your personal uncertainty. It's like when you have a patient in front of you, they've got a condition, you're not really an expert in that condition, but there are other people that might be. Where it's the state of knowledge in general, that's where the science is conflicting, or the science, we just don't know, it's a gap in the research. And one of the places where this is really changing is we're moving away from a complete lack of information to almost too much information. We get that overwhelm of information, and there's a lot of bad information out there as well. So, we're trying to teach our students not so much to memorize things, but to really find good sources and critique where they're getting their information from. Now, a slightly shorter and pithier definition is that idea of it being a subjective perception of not knowing what to think or what to do. And the subjective word is really important there because uncertainty is something that is unique to each of us. We all feel uncertain about different things, and particular uncertainties are more salient for one person than for another. It's very contextual. And this framework, so if anybody's interested in how to tolerate uncertainty and help our students to manage it, this is kind of it in a nutshell here. I'm just going to see. Oh yeah, so relevant in the AI. Yeah, absolutely. Like it's every day is a treasure trove of conversations at the moment. But this particular Hillen et al.'s integrative model captures it all in a nutshell here. So I'll talk you through it. This is something that we want to kind of exteriorize and help our students understand. So on the left, you have your stimulus. That is the provoking issue or set of circumstances. Probability, you're going to give the patient a course of treatment and they might get better or they might not. We don't know. We can't predict. It's in the future. There's multiple pathways. Ambiguity is where we're not sure of the information, or the information is conflicting with each other, or there's a gap in our knowledge. And then complexity is the multiple layers. And anybody who's involved in patient care, the complexities of working with that individual patient, their family concerns, their illness trajectory, where they work, what their diet's like, how they respond to the meds, it is absolute complexity. And so when we perceive that and we realize that we don't know something, that's when we experience uncertainty. Now, it can be moderated by individual circumstances. That our personality can impact on it, our level of education, our background, our cultural background. There's work by Hofstede that shows that different cultures have different kind of tolerance for uncertainty. And I think about Ireland, and if anybody's been to Ireland, I don't know if you noticed this, Amy, but on the East Coast, we're a lot less tolerant for uncertainty. We're a bit more, when we say 5 o'clock, we mean 5 o'clock, and everything has to be kind of ship shape. But when you go to the west of Ireland, time is a little bit of a more fluid concept, and you might turn up on a Wednesday due to go on the ferry, and oh, do you know what, I don't think it's going to go today, it might go tomorrow, we're not so sure, and everybody's okay with that. So there are moderating factors about whether we experience uncertainty or not. And on the right there, so when uncertainty is triggered for us, we can respond in different ways. So cognitive, emotional, and behavioral. Now, cognitive is where we start thinking about the uncertainty, and again, planning and overthinking, and trying to kind of deconstruct ideas and really engage with it. Problem solving, all of that kind of critical thinking would go into that cognitive domain. Emotional, which I think is really, really interesting. We've touched on that in the word cloud. It could be anxiety. We saw nerves, we saw insecurity. It could be frustration. But on the flip side of that as well, when we tolerate uncertainty, we can actually move into places of excitement, exhilaration, curiosity, because uncertainty in itself, it's a neutral construct. And sometimes change can be good. Change can bring us, a new job, a promotion. So we can feel positive emotions around uncertainty as well. And then behavioral is how we respond in our actions and behavior. It may be that we embrace the uncertainty, we get stuck in, we try something new, or it can also happen that we maybe procrastinate or run in the opposite direction. So this is really it in a nutshell. And when we want our students to manage uncertainty, we want to build uncertainty tolerance skills. We want them to be able to sit with an uncertainty, because if they're not able to sit with an uncertainty, the research shows that they can, get into bad decision making. They can overorder tests, they can overprescribe medications, and really crucially, can feel that deep anxiety. And it's not that we want them to be completely uncertainty tolerant either, because a little bit of intolerance is good. If you are too tolerant of uncertainty, you might leave your patient without closing down, their diagnostic pathway. You might leave them a little bit too long in kind of a wait and see approach. So it's all about being aware of it and calibrating the uncertainty tolerance for the domain in front of you, or the set of circumstances. So I came to this project. At the time, I was absolutely really excited about uncertainty, really cognitively curious about it. And then the pandemic happened. So when I put in for funding, and off the back of the scoping review, one of the areas that was seen as very helpful in supporting learning around uncertainty is kind of simulation based learning. And what I considered at that time, because we had a pandemic, I was seeing students that were really bored by videos and PowerPoints, and I knew that they needed something about managing uncertainty. So we decided to go for a game-based learning approach. And we gained funding from the Irish Network of Healthcare Educators and the Medical Council of Ireland for this digital online escape room. And this is a small group puzzle game that we play in the online setting. But the funding was really to design that and to start from scratch. And it was very much a staff-student collaboration. I came at it with the background around uncertainty and teaching and learning, but my students, they brought so much creativity. And I actually, when I put up the recruitment poster, I said I was looking for gamers. I was looking for people who, loved movies, loved, the really creative, arty dimensions. And I've got some fantastic people. So we had direct entry and graduate entry medical students. And because we were all online, we were working in an online environment. And, I had some students in Asia, I had some in the Caribbean, the Middle East. I didn't know how it was going to work. I had a lot of uncertainty about it, but we really, really managed well. What was really key for us was that we wanted to design something that was very much student centered. So at the center of it was our clinical medical students, because the literature shows that all medical students are facing uncertainty, but the ones that feel it really acutely are at transitions. When you move into, you join the program, when you transition between clinical and, classroom and clinical, and also when you go into your first internship onto your residency. So these transitions are really critical places where they're coping with a lot of uncertainty. We used a design thinking approach. So that basically means that we start with a design challenge. And the design challenge was, how might we use a digital education escape room to support learning around uncertainty? And more broadly, we used a design-based research project. So this was part of my PhD. And I was ticking a lot of boxes at the same time. I was multitasking a lot with this. But for design-based research, I mean, this is one of my take homes. And actually, I wonder, just as a show of hands or pop into the chat box, has anybody got any experience with design-based research? Is it something that you're aware of, heard of before? And if you haven't, yeah, just pop that into the chat as well if it's a new term. Rebecca, you've done it in Faculty Development Day. Brilliant, yeah. And Heather, oh, you participated in as a student but no experience yourself. Fantastic. Yeah. Yeah, Cindy. Oh, yeah, Cindy. Yeah, and Nicole, human-centered design. Yeah, absolutely. This is human-centered design. Yeah. Fantastic. Okay. So what design-based research is, and I would say for anybody who's in an educational role, and we have a lot of things to do. We have clinical work, educational work, research work. Combining education and research, design-based research can be a really good way to do that. Now, it looks like a complicated diagram, but I'll just talk you through. You come with your requirements. So this is the thing that you want to work on. It's either your process or your assessment or your teaching portfolio. It's the product or the service or the process that you use, and you want to design that, taking on board data from people that are going to use it, or data from the literature, or recommendations from other stakeholders, and then you're going to put it to the test. You're going to implement it, analyze it, and redesign it. So you try something out, test it, iterate it, test it, iterate it, and you test it in real life, authentic learning environments. So in your classroom, on the ward. And really crucially, with design-based research, what you're doing at the same time is organizing the research and your research questions in such a way that you're also going to develop theory. So we've got a lot of pedagogical frameworks, a lot of teaching theories or learning theories. If we can carry out this research and also do it in such a way that we learn more about our learning theories, or learn more about this conceptual framework, then we can really add a lot of rich data and feed into that evidence base around learning theory. And the theory that we wanted to focus on here was community of it's actually community of inquiry. I don't know if I've got community of practice in there. That's a typo. So this is community of inquiry, and that is a pedagogical framework in the online setting where, to support a really inclusive, immersive, engaging, authentic learning experience in the online setting, you've got to think about cognitive teaching and social presence. So the cognitive presence is arranging the topics and themes and content in such a way that your students are really going to grapple with it and really, engage in that messy struggle around knowledge construction. Teaching presence is where the staff and the VLE, the Canvas, Moodle, whatever it is that you use, the LMS, what is the setup, what is the lesson plans that you use, and also the students themselves can act as teachers in peer relationships as well. So what is the structure around the teaching? And then finally, the social presence, really, really critical in your online setting. So for us, the social presence is the communication and the dialogue and the interaction between you and the learners, and between the learners, and allowing that trust to build, psychological safety in small groups, sharing emotions, enjoying, having fun while you're learning at the same time. And so while we developed the escape room, we also wanted to learn about could we use community of inquiry in an escape room setting, because it's generally for asynchronous, longitudinal, discussion-based courses. It isn't really one that you align with synchronous teaching sessions. So that's what we wanted to explore, and we use design-based research to do that. In the actual build of the escape room, and I've brought up a couple of different artifacts for you here. So in our design thinking, we brought our students together. We did this over 8 weeks. We met every week, and in between each week, we had kind of like a project for the students to go off and do. We had 10 students overall. One was kind of the project lead, and then we had 3 triads, and those students would go off and work with each other and things that they used to work on. So say, for example, we co-constructed an interview guide about uncertainty, and then the students all went out to talk to year 3 medical students who were out in placements to say, you know, what's your experiences of uncertainty? What are the opportunities of uncertainty? What are the challenges with uncertainty? How do you feel about uncertainty? If we were to design an escape game, how could that help? What would be features of that would be useful? And we brought all those ideas back. And what you've got on the left there is a tool known as affinity mapping. And it's a little bit like a very rapid thematic analysis. And we did that in Miro. It's a storyboarding tool. And we were able to kind of get a sense deeply of what those students that were, you know, in the front lines experiencing uncertainty, what were the key issues for them. And then also in the workshops, we were working on building the game. So there's a lot of design elements to an escape game. You have to think about your theme, your storyline. Then you've got to think about how your puzzles fit together, what your puzzles look like. And this is really where the students, I love a young brain. They were just so inventive, so creative. They'd bring stuff back and I'd be like, wow. You know, we had one guy, he's a Dungeons and Dragons games master, and the stuff he was bringing back, like I just thought it was unbelievable. So it was really, really inventive, really creative, and lots of uncertainty, because, you know, we'd be putting these puzzles together and saying, I wonder, are they fun? Like, I wonder, you know, are the other students going to really enjoy them? And crucially, what we wanted to do was align them with the integrative model of uncertainty. So we had some students that mirror the experience of probability, some that mirror ambiguity, some that mirror complexity. And what we ended up with was the hidden hospital. So this was a spooky, the story was that you were off to do your placements at this hospital. You got a lift to the hospital and you were a little bit early and they weren't expecting you. And when you got there, you know, very, very creepy, lots of strange things going on. And so the students, they play this in Microsoft Teams or Zoom. You know, it's kind of agnostic for the synchronous communication software, but it's built on Geniali, which is an interactive slide software. So it's basically PowerPoint on steroids. There's a lot of like fun imagery and animations, and it's kind of built like a branching logic. You know, you can land on one slide and you can move to slide A or you can move to slide B. But crucially, it's no code. You don't have to be a web developer. You don't have to have any computer skills. And I think the educator, I think it's like $90 or something for the year. So it's actually, you know, it's not massively expensive either. And yeah, you build these decks and put your puzzles in there. So the activity itself, and we know from simulation-based learning, it's not just the activity. The activity is the trigger, and the debrief is where a lot of the learning happens. So we have our pre-brief, gameplay, and debrief. And this is all online, and I have 50 students in a group. I send them off in 5s, so I have 10 different groups, and I can actually run a session on all of this in an hour. And I put through about 1,200 students myself on this in the last 3 years, so it's actually very scalable, and I'll talk about that in a bit. But it also can be used in hybrid environments as well. And, we have since used it in face-to-face settings. We have University of Bergen in Norway and also in the Netherlands as well. We've, people using it online and face-to-face. So it's quite a flexible tool. And I'll give you a little bit of an overview here. I'm not going to go into detail on it because it's an open education resource. And if you want to use it and you want to use it with your students, I'll be very free and happy to share it with you. So I don't want to ruin any of the puzzles for you. But basically, the layout of the game is we have our opening puzzle, which tends to be like an easy, you want to have like a low-hanging fruit for your opening puzzle. You don't want to kind of make them feel that there's a barrier or feel very frustrated at the beginning. And then we move into, they meet I think that's the complexity puzzle. They move through emergency room, operating room, rehab, and then there's a closing meta puzzle at the end. And then when they win at the end, there's a video and there's a reveal at the end, and nice music and a little bit of kind of sound effects. What we also have is our spooky owl. And this is our sleep demon. Again, this came out of the brains of my wild medical students. And I just put him in there to remind me to say that with a game like this, like we're never going to be able to compete with commercial professional games. Okay. I don't know if any of you have, you're gamers yourself or your children are gamers. Like it's unbelievable the fidelity, the quality, the production level or production values of some of the games that are out there. So we can't compete with that, but what we can do is incorporate in our games things that are really quirky, that are unique to the context. This is they always get a laugh. Like I can see them as they're in the game and I can see them in the chat channel. And when the sleep demon arrives, the emoticons, flare up in the chat channel. And also in our hint strategy, we had one of our students, he actually played the role of a sleepy registrar. And so when they click in and get a hint, they're like, oh, that's so-and-so, he's in fifth year. So it's little elements like that capture, the imagination or the, kind of relate to the students. They really, really enjoy that. So how did we test this? We went through, because there was that iterative process, we went through multiple rounds of game testing. We had like qualitative play testing, where we would have our students and we had uncertainty experts play the game and speak out loud as they went through it, which is kind of a gaming approach. And then when we got to our almost final prototype, what we did was we had a pre-test and a post-test study design, a mixed method study design, where we measured tolerance for uncertainty, and we also measured kind of perceptions around the escape room. We also did focus groups, and we captured the in-game play, and we analysed the game play according to community of inquiry to see whether could we see characteristics of social teaching and cognitive presence in the gameplay. So what did we find? So one of the first things that we got from this or gleaned from this was our design principles. Now, I think there was around 12 or 14 design principles. And this is when you carry out design-based research, ultimately, whatever the thing that it is that you're developing, you're going to come out with some broad guidelines that can be recommended to others who are going to do something similar. So, for example, for anybody who wants to play use an educational escape room for medical students, 3 of the design principles that we had was to have, an evocative storyline, an engaging storyline that invokes curiosity for learners. We wanted puzzles that are aligned with learners' developmental levels, which provoke shared reflection. That was that cognitive presence. We wanted them to really discuss and get into dialogue with each other. And then using puzzles to evoke emotions that increase arousal, that we want them to go, oh, what is that one there? Or what about that one? So, you really see some really great interactions with the students. What we also found, now, what we did find, tolerance for uncertainty, I will say, did not change from point A to point B. But I think on looking back on it, we had quite a small study population, so it was probably hard to draw any great terms or great kind of findings from that. But what I would definitely say that in the focus groups afterwards, the students were talking about uncertainty in a different way. They were talking less about it being, anxiety producing or nerve wracking. They were recognizing that the team approach, really crucially, they said, like, we're looking at this puzzle. None of us were all like, what is this? And then all it takes is for somebody to go, what's that thing up in the top right there? And then, oh, that could be blah, 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 blah. And they say that having another person sharing the uncertainty, recognizing that even if you stare at something and you can't see an answer, another person might. So actually disclosing your uncertainty with another person when you feel safe to do so can be quite useful. So we definitely saw that the escape room helped them to think differently about uncertainty. We found that whilst, again, like eight weeks of work to create this, but it is something that we've used again and again. And I don't know, like, I think there's definitely a novelty factor to it, and there may be that they start to kind of share the solutions with each other, or there might be a little bit of cheating coming in. I have to keep aware of that, but certainly it front loads. I don't have to go in and redesign this every year. I just kind of roll it out, check it's working, and I can use that with large groups of students. We have quite a large class cohort here, so it's scalable and sustainable. I think it's always when we talk about supporting learning around uncertainty, we have to think about the emotional side of that. It is quite, we don't want to be afraid of provoking emotion as well. And I know when we went for ethics on this originally, one of the reviewers said, do you really want to be provoking uncertainty? And I'm like, yeah, I do actually. So we shouldn't be afraid. Sometimes I think we can overtly sanitize things, but we need to be very aware of the environment. And I know, Amy, like psychological safety is a key interest for yourself as well. We need to make it safe for them to take these risks and try things out and to experience that uncertainty. But I definitely think as educationalists, we need to think about the emotional as well as the cognitive elements. And then what we found, and this is me being nerdy here, that community of inquiry, it's a really cool. I love community of inquiry. I think it just is so applicable. We could definitely see that the learners were engaging with all the dimensions of this in the escape room. So it means then, off the back of this, that if you are doing something that is less longitudinal and more in the moment, you can still apply. I would still recommend COI as an applicable pedagogy. And then really just for myself, like, and I think, again, I would hope most of you on the call, you're involved in clinical research, education, and you're kind of trying to think, how do I bring it all together? And I would say that design-based research is really valuable in practical educational context. So I know, Amy, you talked there about your Teaching Scholars program and getting feedback on it. And, that's exactly the sort of thing that you're running something, you're running a program or a module or a curriculum, and you're listening to people, you're taking on board the information, and you iterate it and you change it and you develop it and you make it really good. But at the same time, designing your research questions so that you've got like a broader message, a wider message that you can bring out to other educators. I would say that co-design with students is immensely rewarding, and it helps really focus interventions. And I would have gone through, like, a lot of my teaching and learning, I'd be stepping into the shoes of the student and empathizing, cognitively empathizing with the student, but there's nothing to replace actually having them on board with you from the get-go, because they can really, no, Jenny, just no, like that's not relevant to us, and I think just as I get older and that generational gap, it's like me and my children, they're just like, no, just no. So having the students in with you and it's so fun as well, especially whenever you're really meeting them where they're at. I used to say to my students, like, I just don't know about this stuff. You tell me, like, talk to me about that. And I think by the end of it, I kept saying to them, don't look at me like I'm not your teacher. I'm not involved with your grades. I'm not involved with your programs. Just, let's meet here. Let's flatten the hierarchy. And then the other thing I've learned is it's okay to experiment, to test and iterate and not be perfect in your teaching. Um, I don't know if this is relatable, but when you're trying to put together your like a paper or a grant proposal, or you're putting a session, somebody's asked you to do a session on X, Y, and Z, and you're trying to perfect it and make it look really nice. I was trying to make my slides look very nice for this today, but oftentimes it's okay to just put it out there and it's not fully formed. You might send it to a friend and say, look, this is a very early draft. What do you think? Or this is my lesson plan. What's your suggestions on that? Putting it out when it's prototype, with people that you trust, that give good feedback. Because what can happen is if we do something and we make it look really glossy and nice, there's that sunk cost fallacy, and we're really tied to it then, and we're like, oh, but it's polished, it's finished, and it makes it harder for us to accept that it's not exactly what the students need. So I'm a little bit more, I'm a lot more freer about putting things out and sending things to people for them to look at. I'm okay with it being messy, and not perfect. And then uncertainty. So the lucky thing about uncertainty is it's everywhere, it's ubiquitous. So it's not a question of, it's not like, you have to wait for an appendix to come in before you can teach around appendicitis. It's there, it's everywhere. And a lot of it is about how we help our students see it. And it's a bit like, I always think of it like one of those, do you remember those magic eye pictures from the 1980s? Do you remember? And you'd be staring at it, and like my mum would be, oh, I see it, it's a butterfly. And I'm like, what, I can't see it. And so we have to help our students see the uncertainty, and we can do that um, in dialogue, in reflection, in our mentorship. And there are times, like, say for example, and I know especially in clinical teaching, it's a little bit, it's either feast or famine. It could be go, 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 or there could be a quiet afternoon and there's not very many patients in. But that's a really good one to talk about the uncertainties or things that they've seen. So let's park the kind of the blood tests and the MRI, but let's talk about uncertainties here. And I think one of the great tools for that is SNAPs. And I can actually, I don't know if anybody, I don't know, Amy, if have you talked about SNAPs before, or is that, yeah, I can pop that into the chat box in a moment. But there's actual tools out there for helping you. You ask your students to specifically say to them, okay, so we've talked about the diagnostics, we've talked about the plan. What are you still unsure about? And you make it safe for them to speak up about uncertainty, because there's a real uh, tradition in medicine to want to mask our uncertainty. Nobody wants to look stupid. Nobody wants to be the one to, ask that question. And there's that whole layer of impression management. We always want to kind of have that professional, I know the answer. And with our students, with our patients, it actually serves us better to speak confidently around uncertainty. And I think a lot of it's in how you speak about it. A patient doesn't want to hear you say, I've no idea, but they want to hear you say, okay, so at the moment, we're a little bit unsure about what's causing the signs, but there's definitely things that we can do. There's definitely tests that we can do to help us narrow that down. So a lot of it's in the framing. And then my final take home was that building educational games can make you slightly relatable to your children. And this is my oldest son, Oisin, here. And he when I was doing this slide deck, I said, oh, look at this picture here. And he read it and he said, oh, I take the slightly out. Really? I've left it in there now, but he did say I could take the slightly. It does make you relatable to your children. But yeah, your experience might vary. Lovely. So, like, I'm very open for questions here, and I'm seeing if there's anything in the chat box. Was there anything that came through there?
Oh, I see Clint, our ed tech extraordinaire, has thrown in a few questions
Sorry, I
for
had
you,
multiple
Jenny.
questions and I didn't want to lose them, so I dumped them all in the chat. I hope you don't mind.
I'm just going to put in snaps into the chat box as well. Lovely. So, have you ever flipped classroom this project where students build the escape rooms for each other? Uh, oh yeah, absolutely. Okay. So with it being
Okay, so
design-based research, part of the data collection that we did was also to interview the students that had got involved in the research and the building of the game. And ironically, they said that it really helped them also to manage uncertainty because they were dealing with the kind of the creativity of building something, of coming together, working with people that hadn't worked with before, and all of that imposter syndrome that we saw in the word cloud there, designing puzzles, but is it any good? Is this puzzle any good? I don't know. And then we would have a show and tell and give feedback to each other. So they learned a lot about uncertainty in building the escape room. So absolutely. And I've seen certainly with AI as well, students that build AI bots for each other as well, learn a lot about AI and what works, what doesn't work, and actually the kind of the limits of AI as well. So I think getting students involved in maker projects like this is really important. Could AI bots or dungeon master escape rooms or play characters? Yeah, there's actually.
I think you just answered that
Oh
one.
yeah, but also I was at an escape room conference there last year, and there's a lot of people using AI to kind of boost building their escape rooms. The jury's out a little bit for me. I do think it can automate quite a few things, and you can get some really nice graphics and imagery, but there's the ethical implications of that. And also, I just think it takes away those little human elements. So, like I said about having we had little people from RCSI, we had little kind of in-house jokes and things like that in there. So you don't want to strip that away either. But certainly, I think you can offload some of the heavy lifting onto that, and then releasing as an open education. Yeah. So, well, I struggled for a long time to try and find where I would post this. And then basically, I was talking about this with a collaborator in Norway. I was showing them the work, and they said, do you know what? Don't put it out there because the students will find it and they will know all the answers and it will ruin it. So I have the stuff. I have a pack. I've got it stored on Google Drive. It's all, the explainer pack for the puzzles, kind of lesson plans, PowerPoints, and also crucially a link to the game itself. So if anybody does want to use that, I'm very happy to share. And Heather, oh, you're gamifying your psychiatry curriculum. Lovely. Yeah. So, Heather, if you want any resources around that, I have loads of information about escape games, medical education. Be very willing to share them as well.
Oh, thank you so much, Jenny. Yeah, we were talking about doing a D&D campaign as well because we're psychiatrists. We all love D&D. So I will grab your email from
Yeah.
someone here. Thank
Yeah,
you.
definitely. Here, I'll pop it into the chat box here. So.
Awesome. Wonderful.
But yeah, I've been to a couple of, like I say, escape game conferences. So I stopped going to medical education conferences for a few years, went to escape games. I had so much fun. Met some really cool people. So lots of like lovely cross-disciplinary stuff.
yeah. And Jenny, I'll mention that some of my teammates and I have had some internal messages during your talk about using these for some of our leadership development plans and helping folks navigate difficult conversations, but also interpersonal interactions and also, all sorts of stuff. So you're definitely getting us excited and getting signed up as a collaborator, whether you know it or not.
Lovely, yeah. Like I say, so I'm very happy to share resources on uncertainty, resources on game-based learning. Anybody wanting to chat about chatbots and AI as well, that's my latest thing. I feel like I feel like a bit of an imposter now because I still keep getting journal requests for escape games, and I'm like, I've kind of moved into AI now. So, but yeah, like I say, I've lots of kind of really good guides and things like that that people can use. Lovely.
Well, this has been fantastic. Thank you so much, Jenny, for joining us. And thank you for inspiring us and exciting us and sharing your tools and being so open to continue the conversations and collaborations and shared learning.
Oh, all my pleasure. No, thank you very much. It's lovely to meet everybody.
Of course. Right.
And great
Thanks,
questions.
Jenny.
Thank you.